Time for another Gulf Coast News viewer question. Earlier this week, Bob wrote in from Lehigh Acres asking if the recent cooler air temperatures have been enough to start cooling down the water temperatures. Bob's question highlights the importance of when water temperatures are around 80 degrees. Warm water like this, when it evaporates into Earth's atmosphere, creates a very humid environment. When thunderstorms come along, that forces the air to rise and generate more showers and downpours and thunderstorms. But it also releases energy into the atmosphere, which kickstarts tropical development. According to NOAA, the average water temperature during the month of October off of Fort Myers is 80.5 degrees. And right now, most of the Gulf is running from the low to mid 80s, though it is warmer in areas of the Western Caribbean. That is commonly the case, though, during the month of October. You typically see a map like this with ocean heat content. This looks at not only what the water temperatures are at the surface, but down through a profile of the water, so where the most amount of available warm water happens to be. So during the month of October, the area we have to watch most closely is where it's highlighted in red through the Western Caribbean Sea. Remember, though, that warm water temperatures up and above 80 are only one of many ingredients that a hurricane has to have in order to form. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Our good luck so far this season continues all the way through the end of the month of November. Hurricanes hate the Saharan air layer. Here's 3 big reasons why. Reason number 1, it can actually cool down the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic. You know, sometimes it's such a big deal you can literally see it from space. And when there's so much dust and particulate matter being pushed over top of the Atlantic Ocean, it can block out some of the sun and cool down some of the sea surface temperatures. Hurricanes just hate that. Reason number 2, the Saharan air layer is very dry. Think of it this way. You know, your typical tropical air mass has a lot of humidity. Imagine it visually here, filling up the top of this jug. On the other hand, the most basic Saharan air layer air mass is super dry, to the order of about half as much humidity, and that drives hurricanes crazy. Reason number 3, the Saharan air layer is very warm. Think about what's inside it. It's full of dust and minerals and pieces of debris that are coming from the desert. As all of that is launched into Earth's atmosphere, it absorbs the sun's energy. That warms it up, and in exchange makes that layer of the atmosphere very stable. So if tropical waves move off of Western Africa and encounter the Saharan air layer, oftentimes they lose all of the ingredients they need to spin up into a hurricane. On the other hand, if tropical waves move off of Western Africa and there's no Saharan air layer, they at least have a shot of spinning up into the next big one. And since we're on the topic then of the Saharan air layer, why don't we take a moment and talk about where it is and where it isn't. And right now, where it isn't is over the Gulf Coast of South Florida. Where the Saharan air layer is present, though, is way south of us, down towards Central America and across the Western Caribbean. And then there's a big push of it right now moving over the open waters of the Atlantic right off of Western Africa. This is one of the big reasons why hurricane season has been relatively quiet so far. We really haven't had anything pop up over the open Atlantic. But remember, the Saharan air layer is typically most active during the first part of hurricane season. June, July, and August is when you're most likely to see these big pushes of the Saharan air layer moving over the ocean. As we transition into the busier times of hurricane season, especially through late August and September and October, there's not nearly as much Saharan air moving around. So we have it. Let's just enjoy it while it's here, because in the areas where it's not present, we actually have a few things to watch, and that includes what's right over top of Florida and across the northern tier of the Gulf. As you know, we've been talking about this thing for several days, and I know that you know that it's here, and I know that you know that the odds of development are a little higher as compared to yesterday. But what's most important to focus on is that even if this area does turn into a tropical depression or a tropical storm, has no bearing on the local weather forecast here at home. This area of low pressure is basically sitting just to the north of the Tampa area right now, and that's why the weather has been kind of unsettled recently. Instead of our showers and storms being focused on the sea breeze recently, it's all just been kind of disorganized shower and thunderstorm activity because we have this storm system that's moving over the state. So as it moves over warm water here starting tomorrow, that's when, if it's going to turn into a tropical depression or a tropical storm, that part of the story becomes more likely. But remember, that's more of like the national focus if it turns into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. Here at home, the only impacts we're seeing from it is what we saw yesterday, what we saw tonight, and what we'll see from time to time tomorrow. That's just a little better coverage of rain. At the moment, the widest coverage of rain is across the western sides of Charlotte County. Still have a few thunderstorms moving across the Rotunda area, primarily to the east of the big circle there, with everything, again, more or less lifting toward the northwest, so trying to move toward the southern tier of Sarasota County as it pulls away from Port Charlotte and pulls away from the Punta Gorda area. There's an hour's lapse of the radar, so you can see the general motion there of everything moving off toward the west and northwest. So for the rest of the night tonight, considering that area of lower pressure, that storm system is to the north of us, we'll have to account for the opportunity of an additional shower or a rumble of thunder. And tomorrow, as that storm system pulls away from us, it'll be a very similar idea as today. Most of the rain and storms in the morning stay over the water. Then in the afternoon, unsettled atmosphere kicks up a few showers and thunderstorms, not really bringing us much of a severe weather threat. But if a few neighborhoods get stuck under a few heavy downpours, we may once again have a few areas of isolated flooding. As it moves away from us, though, the weather forecast down here turns a lot quieter. In fact, so much so by Saturday and Sunday, we have lowered rain chances quite substantially. Right now for the forecast on Saturday, the data calls for a rain chance of only 20%. So with less rain to go around for the first half of the weekend, be a little hotter, with numbers more consistently hitting 95 just after lunchtime on Saturday afternoon. Back to you. Time now for tonight's What's on Rob's Radar, and with some of the coldest temperatures since January of 2022 coming to the Gulf Coast tonight, it's important that you're aware that we may wake up to some areas of frost in the morning tomorrow. And this even goes, by the way, for neighborhoods where your home thermometer might say your backyard is above freezing. How is that possible? Well, something that's important to know is that temperatures on ABC7, and as reported by the National Weather Service, are taken at a height of about 5 feet above the ground, not at the actual ground level. This means when we talk about temperatures, we talk about the temperatures your face experiences, not necessarily your toes. And this is really important in cold weather situations because cold air is dense and it sinks. And sometimes there can be a big difference in the temperature between the ground level and 5 feet up. To visualize this, I built you another little model here. This green represents the grass, the blue represents the night sky. So let's say, for sake of example, in this neighborhood, the temperatures tonight drop down to 35 degrees. But remember, that temperature is taken at about 5 feet above the ground. Because of the density of air, sometimes you can see temperatures drop 2, 3, even 4 or 5 degrees at a distance of just 5 feet, meaning the frost temperature here at 32 degrees could be cold enough to allow frost to form on this front yard. This is also, by the way, why sometimes you'll experience frost on the hood of your car. Your car doesn't absorb and release heat the same way the earth does. So at night, sometimes it can also cool down to 32 degrees, even if the official temperature report for your neighborhood is 35. Allowing the moisture on the hood and the windshield to freeze in the form of frost. Something very important to keep in mind as we wake up to a chilly morning tomorrow.
Everglades, Alex Howard, Gulf Coast News.
And gosh, seeing images of the Everglades like that, it's not surprising that now the latest update on the drought monitor is extreme, a level 4 out of 5 for nearly every single portion of the Gulf Coast. You know, the drought monitor scale is very different than other weather scales you're probably familiar with. Like during hurricane season, when a storm hits 157-mile-per-hour winds, it's a category 5, whether it's in the middle of the ocean or making landfall. But the drought monitor is very different. There's a lot more nuance that's involved with putting together a drought monitor. In fact, the folks who do it best describe it using this, a Venn diagram, something you probably did in school. The first circle, the first portion of our Venn diagram is data, like taking into consideration how many inches of rainfall is a community in a deficit for the entire year. The second portion of the Venn diagram, the second information the folks at the drought monitor take in consideration is impacts. They look at things like river and reservoir levels and how many wildfires have been developing. All those symptoms of a drought are important in determining just how bad it happens to be. And the third portion of our Venn diagram is local feedback. The folks at the U.S. Drought Monitor talk to the folks who are on the ground, like state climatologists and farmers, because who knows better the ground conditions than the farmers who grow all of our food. So once a week, the people at the U.S. Drought Monitor, they take into consideration all of these things. And the point where they come together, That's what gives us the U.S. Drought Monitor. It's very comprehensive, but also very, very different as compared to other weather scales. So, is there any relief with the drought? Well, why don't we head over to the weather wall and take a look at Gulf Coast Live Radar. And that takes us to tonight's What's on Rob's Radar. What I'd like to do for you tonight is visually demonstrate why the temperatures will be so much colder on Friday night as compared to every other night this week. And the big deal here is the cloud cover. Clouds play a huge role in the temperature forecast. And to demonstrate this, this here will represent the daytime sky, this here will represent the nighttime sky, and these cotton balls will represent the cloud cover. Did you know that even on nice weather days, only about half of the sun's energy that moves toward the planet is actually absorbed by the Earth's surface? That's because a lot of the sun's energy hits the clouds before it makes it to the Earth and is reflected back into space to the tune of nearly 30%. That makes it very easy to visualize why overcast days, like we've had so much of this week, make the cloud cover a big role in the forecast by keeping the afternoon temperature so cool. Even less of the sun's energy is able to make it down to the Earth's surface, keeping us substantially cooler in the afternoon. Now, clouds have a very different relationship when it comes to the nighttime low temperatures. You know, at night, as soon as the sun goes down, the heat that the Earth's surface does absorb starts to radiate back into Earth's atmosphere. But on nights when you have abundant cloud cover, like we've had every single night this week so far, they act like the world's biggest blanket by preventing that heat from escaping out too far into the atmosphere. In fact, NASA says nights with cloudy skies in the right conditions can be some 13 degrees warmer as compared to nights where there's no cloud cover at all. And that's the tie-in to Friday night's forecast. On Friday night, we're expecting to get rid of the cloud cover, and that will allow the heat to radiate away from the Earth's surface at night, giving way to not only the coolest temperatures in the 7-day forecast, but potentially some of the coolest temperatures of the winter season so far.